Voice carries the writer's intensity and glues together the information that the reader needs to know. It is the music in writing that makes the meaning clear. A very good afternoon to the galaxy of intellectuals, Your Excellency, invited guests, and the professors. I, Adarshi Dubey,
And I, Yamini Mishra,
on behalf of Amity School of Languages, Lucknow campus, welcomes you all on the last day of Faculty Development Program organized on Challenging the Status Quo, Voices in Literary Studies. On the sixth day of the event, that is yesterday, we got the opportunity to hear from Dr. Rajesh Sarkar, a Sanskrit scholar who spoke about the literary works in Sanskrit and also recited some peaceful shloks in Sanskrit. Moving forward with the event, I would like to quote C.S. Lewis. Literature adds to reality. It does not simply describe it, it enriches the necessary competencies that daily life requires and provides. And in this respect, it irrigates the deserts that our lives have already become. The idea that literature holds mirror to the society is at least as old as Plato's concept of imitation. The might of the pen is unreservedly greater than the blow of a sword, as is evident in the power of the word which has shaped civilizations.
literary studies in various languages have been instrumental in giving a voice to the voiceless, enabling and even empowering the subalterns to speak and to be heard. One can find abundant examples in literature through which the authors have questioned the stereotypes, be it kind of marriage, women's positions, Dalit pride, or the rights of the LGBTQ. Even epics of antiquity have been rewritten and reworked in a way that offer divergent perspectives to the myths and legends that have been coming to us through the ages. One can cite umpteen examples in literature where the authors have dared to challenge the status quo.
Everyone who remembers his own education remembers teachers, not methods and techniques. The teacher is the heart of the educational system. With significant respect, I would like to introduce the one and only distinguished director and professor of Amity School of Languages, who is the epitome of knowledge, grandeur, dedication, discipline, enlightenment, and our inspiration. Professor Dr. Kumkum Ray Ma'am. Professor Dr. Kumkum Ray, who is a senior Cambridge Honours graduate from Lady Shri Ram College, Delhi University, she was awarded the Best Thesis Award for her PhD degree on Henry Louis Gawain Derozio, the first Anglo-Indian nationalist poet. She is an education and poet activist with 42 years of experience in teaching. She is the founder director at Amity University, Uttar Pradesh, Lucknow campus. Her anthology, Breathe Free, Flow Free, published by Notion Press, is the reflection of challenging the status quo in literary narratives through poems. She is truly the wind beneath her wings.
With this, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Sonu Seni sir, who is a gold medalist and a well-known expert in Russian language and expert in India. He is working as a assistant professor at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. He completed his PhD in Russian documentary prose from the University of Delhi and taught there for some years. He joined JNU as assistant professor in 2012. He has a special interest in translating literature from Russian into Hindi and English and working this is a field for more than 12 years. He has translated Russian writers M. Zoskeno, A. Shekhev, Pushkin. His latest publication is in translation is Parva, a Kannada classic novel by S.L. Bhairappa, published under the HCO project announced by the Honorable Prime Minister of India in June 2019. The book was published by Sahitya Academy in 2020. We welcome you, sir. The stage is all yours.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers, Professor Kumkum Ray and Dr. Shraddha ji, for inviting me here. It's really wonderful to be here in Amity. Of course, I wish to be there offline, like in the campus, but due to such restrictions, due to COVID, we are having this program online. So let me just share my PPT with you. Here it is. Is it visible?
Yes, it is
Shraddha?
visible. Yes,
All
yes,
right.
it is visible.
So today I'll be speaking about the on the topic like challenging status quo voices in the work of Alexievich. I hope like you had various other sessions on such topic, on similar type of themes, and for that, like I would just like to confirm from your side, like do you understand the status quo? Just type plus in your chat box if you understand the status quo. And if you have any doubt, please type minus in your chat box if you don't understand, if you still have some confusion. It will help us, like if you know, if we are on the right track or if you need to just elaborate this status quo as well. So, no, does it come? Yeah, I think it comes. It seems like there is some technical thing like the plus sign doesn't come in the chat box. Okay, what I got the brief about the previous lectures, and even I was there in some of the lectures, and I found that yes, it was discussed, and I hope like you understand the meaning of status quo. It is something like which is we are having at present time, and we are not changing it, and the all the innovations, all the inventions, and new innovating things they come after challenging the status quo. And there is also, of course, this was the question like, have you read any work of literature apart from your syllabi, any literary work apart from your syllabi, like from any language, like in English, in Hindi, or any regional language? Have you come across, and what have been your kind of experiences? We could have shared, but I think there is some technical issue. Let's go further. So the question comes in the beginning, like why do we read books or literature? What do they give us? Like generally, we can say that they are like they are various kind of functions of any literary piece. Like some first function is cognitive, like it gives us something new, some knowledge, and enriched our experiences in various fields. It educates is the second educative is the second function, like it educates a person towards a bright future. Then the third one is aesthetic, like which is called in Hindi ras, like you read and you enjoy. Like the moment many a times we feel that, or we have observed people reading books and they are laughing, or they are just crying, maybe they are having some lines on their forehead showing that they are intention, or at last like we can just say that it's a travel without a ticket. That means like you can travel to any point, any corner of the world without any ticket. Like it gives that plenty of information of that particular group, a particular caste, creed, or we can say space without going over there. Now, coming towards the topic, Svetlana Alexievich, many of you may be knowing so who Svetlana Alexievich is. Svetlana Alexievich is a Belarusian writer, and she writes in Russian, and she has written for 5 to 6 books, and she is the one of the Nobel Prize winner, and she got the Nobel Prize in 2015. And fortunately, I was working on her works for I think more than like I started working on her work somewhere like in 2009, and in 2015, while I was studying, I was working, I was conducting my research, and she got the Nobel Prize. And that shows that, okay, that topic which she touches upon, the voices, they are in demand, they are relevant today as well. And if we go towards Svetlana Alexievich, like earlier, she was considered as like a Russian writer, right? Although she born and brought up in Belarusia, and then she moved to Ukraine, and then she was considered as a Russian person. But later on, like after this, uh, after like 2000 onwards, she was exiled, and then she was not allowed to enter into her country because she was writing in not in the interest of the state, somewhere like that. So she had to face a lot of repercussions, and she had to leave, and she lived there in Germany, in various countries of Europe for several years. Now she is back into Belarus. Now, history of Soviet Russia. If we talk about in brief, you may have the idea like till 1917, there was a regime of the rulers like Raja, Maharaja, or Tsars, we call it. And after like 1917, there was a revolution. After that, of government was formed, which is called Soviet government, and which claim that it's a power, it's a government of workers or peasants. That means a people. And although that by the historical events we found that slowly and gradually this government could not be formed as a people's government. It formed something else. It was a kind of authoritarian type of regime in which various type of unfortunate incident happens. And somewhere like in 1953 till 1950, like from 1917 onwards till 1953, there was a regime like when where people were not free to write on their own, like as per their will. So they had to write as per the line of the state. Like if there is a development in state, then they were allowed to write only on that point of line. If they are not writing on that line, they were not allowed to be published. So on 1953, there was a change in regime when Stalin died. And then there was a small kind of window, which is called this period from 1953 to 1964 is called, this period is called as period of thaw. Now, if what happened in this period of thaw, like people were allowed to write whatever they want to write. But then slowly, gradually, that window was over. And then again, the same regime, like authoritarian type of regime came back from 64 onwards. And then in 1985, when Gorbachev came into power, then he again opened this type of window, this kind of censorship. And 85 onwards, like 85 to 1991, the writers, the people were allowed to write or read any topic. So this was a particular brief about this window of Russian history. Svetlana Alexievich, she wrote five books, if we just say majorly, in major form. And the death of Stalin in 1953, when we are coming towards the history of Soviet Union. So he was the person who controlled everything. Like if you say that literature also, like you are not allowed to write. If you have written something, then you are not allowed to publish, and you are not allowed to read also. You cannot read such a person, otherwise you will be punished. And in like when this 1985 period came, the new which is called like new emergence of a kind of new epoch, which is also called, I think, in the period of history, about perestroika and glasnost, which means like openness and pluralism. And this happened to be the historic kind of announcement of the century, which rolled in a new epoch in the life of Soviet Union and also the entire world. And the period from like 1985 towards 1991, if we just go towards 1991, could be said to be a kind of great significance in more than one ways for the people of Russia. Like apart from democratization of the society, it saw the Russian literature buried and shelved. Like people who wrote, they shelved, they forgot, they ignored, they came back into the press, they were published, which like which the works in not only in Russia but also writers from other countries. Like there were various kind of ways. There were 3 to 4 waves where the writers which were not who were not writing as per the line of the state, they were asked to leave the country. So many of the writers, like thousands of writers, they left Russia. They migrated towards into various European countries. They while living over there, they were writing about the on the topic they wished to. But those books were not brought into Russia because of the Iron Curtain. If you have heard about this Iron Curtain, like they were cut from the Russian and European, kind of cultures. The similar thing which is happening today also. Like now today, Russia is again cut from European world. Like whatever is being said in Russia, it's not reaching to the other countries, even to India as well. Everything is coming towards from only European side, towards this Russian and Ukrainian war. And the initial, period of perestroika had a very had a kind of heavy accent on laying bare all truth of about history of Russia and filling up back the black spot of their history. And this is the evident from the literary works of the second half of the 80s, when the Russian literature of this period, which we say that the glassness, the openness, saw the appearance of many works dealing with such topics which were earlier considered to be untouchable. And many writers portrayed the darker sides of the Russian society. Many wrote about subjects that were earlier marked as taboo themes in Russian literature of the Soviet realist tradition. And Svetlana Alexievich, as you said, the Belarusian writer, she recorded, like, what is the specific about Svetlana Alexievich, that she recorded the oral history about some of the major landmarks, or we can call it hotspots of the Soviet Russia during 20th century, like the World War II, like the period after World War II, and the period during Soviet-Afghan war. There was a war between Soviet and Afghan, and then about the Chernobyl nuclear disaster and fall of the Soviet Union. So from Second World War till the fall of USSR, she wrote about these landmarks in her books. And this dramatic history of Soviet Union, of like 70 years of rise and fall of Soviet socialist state, has been encapsulated by Alexievich in her works in this period, in the period of from 1985 towards till 1997, and the latest book which she wrote, which was published in 2013 somewhere. So Alexievich decodes the various spots of the country, giving an alternative point of view, like whatever we got to know during Soviet Russian, like people, we were of course reading various books of history, but we were not getting that kind of point of view. We were just getting the status quo type of thing. It was not challenged. It was not the alternative point of view was not given at that time. And the writer terms her work as the voices of the Soviet utopia. And like the first work, the unwomanly face of the war, this she wrote this book before it was published, of course, like, and it was lying on her table, and she was not able to publish it. And even there was a time like when they had to hide their books, hide their manuscripts, not books but manuscripts, whatever they have written, by either it is by hand or it is typed. They had to bury, or they had to hide such kind of material. Otherwise, like, the state could have access, and they could have been punished at that time. So this book speaks about the experiences of Russian women soldiers, especially during the World War II. And people say that in wars, it's only the story of men we get to know. At any point of time, or any piece of literature, Rarely there any women is recalled, or just a story of women is shared. So it's in this book, like, so it can be called as a monologue of women, like speaking about the Second World War from a different point of view, how they were forced to go to the war, what they saw in that war, what they felt at that time, how they were forced to go and survive, and how they survived also further, even after the war. More than 2 million copies of this work was sold, and it was repeatedly printed. It was that much famous, not only in Russia, but in various parts of the world. Alexei said about this book, that in my book, the women soldiers talk about those aspects of the war which men never mentioned. We did not know about such a war. Men described their exploits while women talked about something else. For example, how frightening it was to walk along a field covered with dead bodies scattered about like potatoes, all very young. You feel sorry for all of them, both the Russian and the Germans. After the war, women had to fight another war. They concealed their military IDs and certificates of wounds because they wanted to get married. So to get married, there was like, it's not only the war they won. They fought the war, they won the war, but and after that also they had to fight another war in the society with the people. As per the voices given in this book, they show that how they had to struggle to get married, because if they were, if anybody, they were identified that they were in the military, they were there in the war, they were marked as a kind of special people who may have be not sacred, kind of that thing, like, okay, this is the women, or this is the girl who had been into the war, and they were living with the men in the tents, and they were having all kind of talks. So they had to hide their ID cards, hide their medals. If they have got any kind of identity, they could not reveal because of such reason. And this work, like Alexei, which covers new ground for as far as such the position of Russian women, which is considered in the Soviet Union, like whatever, like we have got to know. We know that the position of the Soviet state vis-a-vis like Russian women had been quite ambivalent, and the position of the Russian women in the Russian society had been far from being satisfactory. It is not easy to be in war after the war for such kind of women. The voices again, like whatever has been written, the after the war, after the Second World War, we got this narrative that a heroic kind of picture of all the soldiers, that they are heroes, they are they fought for the nation, they fought for the world also, but they nowhere they were such kind of stories like how they struggled. So status quo was maintained, status quo was created, like everyone in the Soviet Union after the World War II, they are happy now, they are good, they are fine, but no one challenged that status quo because they were not allowed to do so. I'm just giving an example. You can correlate with, with any country, with our country as well, in past, future, or past, present, or future. It can happen any point of time, and you can correlate. Okay, such kind of situation was there in the history, and they can be there in present, and there can be such kind of situation in future. So this is one episode. This is one book about of Svetlana Alexievich, which challenges the status quo through the voices of sufferers. And she recorded. She says that I record more than 500 to 600 voices to write a book. Then she goes back. She listen to the trauma again and again. She correlate the information. She get a thread between the voices. Then writes the book. The second book, called The Last Witness. This work contains personal memories, or like we can just say memories of children and adult who were about 17 to 12 years old at that time, or at the time of World War II. It's again a kind of continuation, a different point of view of the war. Like people, children, or the adults who were there in the war for various reasons. The war seen through the children's eyes revealed a whole new world of personal tragedies. And that it was initially published in Belarusian and Russian languages, and after some years this book had been translated and published in various languages of the world. Although after getting, like, even before getting the Nobel Prizes, Svetlana Alexievich's book were published in more than 20 languages, because when I was conducting the research, and I found that various works have been translated in more than 20 languages. And after that, it has been translated into various other, like in more languages, and now even it is being translated in Hindi as well. Now, speaking about her book, of this Last Witness, Alexievich herself says, so I quote, these are war reminiscences of those who were only 7 to 12 years old. The war is described through innocent children's eyes. Dostoevsky once said that the common good is not worth anything if it is obtained at the cost of one children's tear. So this is again a philosophical thing, that if a war is fought on a children's tear, it's worthless. That means common people, they should not be suffered in the fight of states, in the fight of power. If there is any harm to the common people, especially the children, women, it may not be worth to conduct such kind of fight. And Alexeyevich, through this work, raised a very pertinent issue related to the Soviet development paradigm, because there were various kind of, again, narratives and talks like, okay, the people and the children, they are very happy even after the Second World War, even before the World War, how they were developing. Of course, there is no doubt that they developed a very good educational system, where like they achieved around 99 percentage of the literacy, like where everyone goes to school, they get the education. But still there were people who were at this marginalized kind of periphery, which were who were like not in a good state, who were not taken care even after the World War. If we can correlate with this situation which we had in India during the Corona second wave, especially I would mention, because that is the wave which hit most hard the country, and many people, many parents died and their children left alone. So if such kind of situation is there, then it may be called very unfortunate, because children, the who lost their parents, they you cannot imagine even uh, the trauma they may have gone through, and they will get when they realize what they have lost, even they have no knowledge about that. The third work she wrote, Boys in Zinc, or some translation it is called Zinky Boys, the Soviet voices from the Afghanistan war. This is another piece of work which is based on oral history. Now, this is the beauty, or this is the different thing about Svetlana Alexievich, that she is not adding fiction into her works. It's all totally kind of documentary prose, which has, we can say that, which maximize the truth, and which has the maximum percentage of having trust of information, whatever is being catered in that book. So it this kind of oral history reveals the hidden dimension of Soviet war in Afghanistan, which was there like from 1979 to 1989. Here, the author was here the Alexeyevich has written the experiences of suffering of Soviet soldiers during and after Soviet Afghan war. This is the war like where she herself visited the spot. She was working as journalist, and she was there in Afghanistan, where she recorded the interviews, where she met people and recorded their interviews, not only for of Russian soldiers, but also the families of Afghanistan soldiers and even Afghanistani soldiers as well. And she conveys the feeling of widows and mothers of the fighters, which were called Zinky Boys. Now, why they are called Zinky Boys? Because were they were brought home in zinc coffins from Afghanistan. You can understand like what now? What does it mean? Like when they are brought back in zinc coffins. And this work had exposed the myths of heroism of the Soviet Afghan War, which was there in the Soviet Union and which was scattered to the world at that time from this one alternative, one kind of view. This is why, the book was attacked by military and communist, and Alexeyevich was subjected to political court suit in year 1992. But later, after protest from international human rights groups, the case was withdrawn against her, and she was allowed to move free. The author states, about her work that it's about the 10-year Soviet-Afghan War. It comprises the stories of like more than 100 officers and soldiers taking part in the incomprehensive war, as well as widows and mothers of the war victims. And we learn how the two world, East and West, clashed in a cruel and hopeless duel. You can understand that duel, like in Hindi we call it Dvanda Yuddh, which happened in between various writers in Russia as well as in Europe, where one challenges and another accepts, and then only one person will be left alive. What kind of war it was, she says. What people were thinking about then, how they killed one another, how they desperately strived to survive. Even time passing differently there, the calendar itself was different. It was almost 200 years back in time. This is what I heard again and again in many stories. It is this common situation where such kind of war is led, and this work is totally relevant today, where we can just change the space in between the events. Like you just change just the word Afghanistan as Ukraine, and the situation is similar as it was there some decades ago. Through a country, some other people are fighting that war, and one another country is trying to save, you can say, or try to resist that kind of attack. In between, that one country, which is called Ukraine, is being thrashed from both the sides. This is the situation, and this is what we can say the beauty of literature, that you read a work and then you correlate with the situation from past, present, and future. Now, the next work which we have, Voices from Chernobyl, the oral history of nuclear disaster. This book was published in 1997 in Moscow, whereas like after that, various editions were published. It has been translated into more than 30 languages. This book is not so much about the Chernobyl nuclear accident as about the world after the incident, which carries the voices of sufferers who directly or indirectly were affected by the Chernobyl nuclear accident. In this book, one can find the accident from the point of view of the survivors, the voices of almost all layers of the society, like general people, women, children, soldier, official, personal, atomic power plant, government officials, psychologists, teachers, photographers, etc. There are a lot of people who were there around Chernobyl who suffered the rays, the nuclear rays, which the voices which were collected in this work that form a kind of alternative point of view of the historical this kind of disaster. And it was said that following about the post-Chernobyl disaster at various times when it is hard to believe what happened in that place. And you know that Alexievich has been relentlessly treading this different path, walking and collecting the untold, unheard stories of the survivors. Like in Chernobyl disaster, people, whatever they got to know, they tried to reveal, they tried to say, but it was not easy for them because there was at one place there was state, there were one place there were other various restrictions. They were not allowed to say so, but somehow when that period came when they were allowed to say, they somehow revealed various facts which gives a clear picture like what all happened and how we can learn from such kind of incident. And she like that when a writer again and again come back to such kind of theme and her own destiny, her own documentary voice is embodied in her works. The voice is not that of a stranger, but a person who is a fellow participant of what is happening in the world. Alexievich has chosen the major historical events, right? And the last work which has been written as a second hand time on which she received the Nobel Prize and which was called as a polyphony voices or polyphony work, where you can see people who were there after the fall of Soviet Union, how they felt on the fall, how they received, how they perceived the fall. There were people who were not happy about that, who were committing suicides after falling the Soviet Union because they were so attached to such kind of system where you can find a bread in 5 paisa, milk in 2 paisa, where everything is free, where job is guaranteed, health is guaranteed, education is guaranteed. But what was missing? The freedom of speech. That was what which was missing in Soviet era. For that, like they were ready to give away this freedom of speech, and they were happy about these 3 points. So many of them, they committed suicide. And here in this book, Svetlana Alexievich tries to gather such kind of stories, like people from their maybe relatives. There are some relatives, and there are people who survived even after they committed suicide, and they somehow survived. She tried to gather their voices as well, like why they are doing so, and what they feel about that. And there was in this book, like this secondhand time, she also gathered voices of people who were very happy to see this kind of fall because they were not ready to give up their freedom of speech kind of right, which is considered as the basic one. Because you can, well, as per their point of view, you can be happy for some time if you get bread, medical, and education. If you get everything, if you get job and everything, you can be happy for some time, but cannot be happy for a longer period. At point of time, you would really wish to say something. You would wish to utter some words, and if you're not allowed to utter a word, then you can be called as a robot, which are getting their charges, their energy, and they are working and they're happy. So in we say that Alexievich, in such kind of works, like Alexievich has chosen the major historical events of the 20th century that took place in the Soviet Russia as the subject of her writing. She has chosen the topic such as like World War II, Soviet-Afghan War, the fall of Soviet Union, Chernobyl disaster, and these are this period, or we can just these points in the history of Soviet Russia is considered as uh, major points. Like if we consider the history of Soviet Union, which tells about how the uh, direction was there in the state, and the personal stories, voices of more than 100 people in in the books, they shout out the reality, because it's not that people are fabricating their stories, because generally when you record the voices at mass level, then you get a kind of objective um, history, a kind of objective truth. And Alexeyevich, of course, has earlier tried to write in various genres like short stories, essays, reportages, and but could not find the most suitable genre. Like similarly, as a kind of journalist also. But after reading the book of famous Belarusian writer Adamovich, who was written in the genre of documentary prose, such as the book I'm from Fairy Village and the book of this sage, she found her way to write in more effective manner. And this is the way like she got her this genre, recording voices and getting them encrypted in the of the topic. Similarly, we can also find in India various books like Surupa Mukherjee, a professor in
Due to
uh,
technical issues,
am I
we'll be
audible
back.
now? I think there was
Yes, sir.
some network failure from my side. Am I audible now?
Yes, yes, you are audible.
Okay. I'm just turning off my camera to save the bandwidth. I think there is some technical issue or network issue at my side. Will that be fine? Shraddha ji, will that be fine if I turn off the camera?
Yes, yeah, yeah, no issue, no issue. You can carry on.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So I'll just rewind. Yeah, I was talking about there are various works in India also, like a professor from Delhi University, Hindu College. She wrote about the disaster of Bhopal gas tragedy, which occurred in 1980s. And she wrote the book, something like called Bhopal gas tragedy, dancing bodies, and then go on. And this book also carries the voices. She went there, she recorded the interviews, she recorded stories of people who suffered that gas tragedy, people who were living near the plant, what kind of issues they are facing. And she has the similar type of style of writing as like Svetlana Alexievich writes. She also got various prizes for such kind of thing. Now, this is the power of challenging the status quo. We can say Gandhiji also challenged the status quo. Otherwise, he could not have been that much famous. He challenged the law, the rule of Indian regime, which was not allowing people to make salt. And he then challenged this kind of rule, and he challenged various other rules of British government. And then he became a kind of popular personality. People like to follow him because you have there are two kind of ways. Either you can follow the path which is being shown, either you just try to invent your own. Of course, first option is easier, and the second one is tougher. I think again there was some network here. I'm so sorry for that. So I'll say that two ways are there. Either you follow one or invent your own. First one is very easy to follow someone, and other one is tough because there you have to think, there you have to struggle to find a new way. Similarly, like Urvashi Bhotalia wrote about the partition, the sorrowful event in the history, and how people suffered from both the sides. She goes and she records their interviews. She writes based or her book, which is called, I think, The Other Side of Silence, which is also based on the uh, interviews of the sufferers, how they felt, how they were, they even how they survived even after the this kind of a tragical incident, how they were hiding, and even the place where I born and bought. I heard such kind of stories like when this was the time, like when during the time of partition, people were running. Like there were many people living here in our area, and they were running towards the Pakistan, and they knew that if they leave, they will be killed, and that is why like that men fled away, leaving the women alone. They felt if they take women, they will be robbed for sure. They'll not be robbed, but the women will be raped and they will be killed. So men fled away, taking all the belongings. Women left behind. And this is what like my forefather narrates this story, that women who left behind, they gathered all their jewelries and went to the people, local people who were there here, who were protected, who were also, kind of powerful people in the society. They went to them, they bought all the jewelry, and they, bow down towards them, like, take whatever you want, we'll be your slaves. And then they somehow survived. So such kind of, what I want to just to say that voices, when you hear the voices of sufferers, of course you get to know a different kind of reality. It's not what we see in the news or what we read in the newspaper today. That may not be a total reality. That may be polished, that may be a kind of interfered or influenced type of reality which we are catered today. The real history, the real incident, you get to know only at the spots where the such kind of incidents are happening. And these books like of Svetlana Alexievich, she challenges the status quo, getting the voices of marginalized people or people on the periphery onto the main stage, and gives a kind of alternative views which was not there earlier, which can be considered as challenging the status quo. So with this, thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'm glad to answer, or you can mail me later on also if you get any question.
Thank you so much, sir. Your words has really created an impact on our minds. Now, I would like to request all of you to fill up the feedback form sent on your WhatsApp.
A teacher plants the seed of knowledge, sprinkles them with love, and patiently nurtures their growth to produce tomorrow's dreams. With this, I would like to invite Mr. Rohit Yadav sir. He is an experienced assistant professor with a demonstrated history of working in the higher education industry. He is skilled in acting, stage direction, communication training, English, and theatre. I request Mr. Rohit Yadav sir to present the glimpse of the FDP and give the vote of thanks and bring an end to the 7 days of the valuable and engaging program. Let's make the end of this formal function with appreciation and gratitude to all those who made this program a grand success. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Adarshi. Thank you, Yamini. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
I heard, as all have heard, the various story of human life, and they walk towards progress. Every step, every journey of humanity has seen a challenge to status quo. A very good evening to all. It has been a wonderful, enriching, and transformative faculty development program organized by Amity School of Languages, Amity University, Lucknow. Today we are at the conclusion of this program, which was a rigorous and thought-provoking program started on 25th April 2022. The topic of the FDP, Challenging the Status Quo, Voices and Literary Studies, provided intellectually rejuvenating experience. Every speaker who spoke and interacted with the audience justified the title and intention of the workshop and has challenged the status quo through their practical approaches or literary texts they have discussed. Societies cannot be transformed and move cannot transform and move forward without challenging the status quo. We can't think of progress, upliftment, and rational evolution without challenging the status quo. The workshop was organized on remote.
You're not audible, Mr. Rohit.
Okay, am I audible now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, fine. I heard, as all have heard, the various story of human life, and they walk towards progress. Every step, every journey of humanity has seen a challenge to status quo. A very good evening to all. It has been a wonderful, enriching, and transformative faculty development program organized by Amity School of Languages, Amity University, Lucknow. Today, we are at the conclusion of this program, which was rigorous and thought-provoking program started on 25th April 2022. The topic of the FDP, Challenging the Status Quo, Voices in Literary Studies, provided intellectually rejuvenating experiences. Every speaker who spoke and interacted with the audience justified the title and intention of the workshop and has challenged the status quo through their practical approaches or literary texts they have discussed. Societies can't transform and move forward without challenging the status quo. We can't think of progress, upliftment, and rational evolution without challenging the status quo. The workshop was organized on remote mode, which itself reflects a practical reflection of title of the faculty development program, as it challenges the very status quo of workshops being conducted on physical mode. Literature and art have been the key source in any society to challenge the status quo. The change in society has always come through art. Murakami, in his Kafka on the Shore, says, "And once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through, how you managed to survive. You won't even be sure, in fact, whether the storm is really over. But one thing is certain, when you come out of the storm, you won't be the same person who walked in." That's what this storm is all about. And that's what this workshop is all about. Attending this 7 days rigorous workshop on challenging the status quo, voices and literary studies, we have surely gone through a transformation and have expanded our horizons in understanding the need of challenging the status quo. On day one, the session started with welcome address by Professor Dr. Kumkum Ray, Director, Amity School of Languages and convener of the Faculty Development Program. She spoke about the topic and made us aware about the reasons behind organizing the FDP and need of innovation and creativity in teaching pedagogy of literature. We cannot be reformed till academia doesn't dare to challenge the very status quo. On day one, we have two distinguished speakers, Dr. Kusum Khimani, President Bharatiya Bhasha Parishad Kolkata, West Bengal, and Ms. Ritu Priya Khare, President Telecom Women Welfare Organization BSNL, Maharashtra and Goa. They explained their respective books, Lal Batti Ki Amrit Kanyai and Ganga Yatra, to the audience and were able to put forth their personal opinions and perspectives regarding the literary studies and their significance. On day two, we had Dr. Prasad Kurnapalli and Dr. Sandeep Avasthi as speakers. Dr. Prasad is a Gandhian scholar and associated with Gandhi King Foundation. He spoke about how Mahatma Gandhi challenged the status quo against Britishers. Dr. Avasthi is a well-known author, scriptwriter, and researcher addressed on the topic Sanskrit, Rashtrita or Hum, and talked about how important it is to go back to our roots. On day three, Dr. Arjun Chauhan, professor and chair, Department of Hindi at Shivaji University, Kolhapur, shared his vast experience in the field of academia and as a prolific writer. Sir has experience of teaching in academia for 34 years and has published more than 50 books. He shared his experience on how he has challenged the status quo through his writings. Mr. Mahendra Bhishma, an author who holds the position of registrar along with principal bench secretary at High Court Lucknow, he reflected on topic of FDP through his works such as Jai Hind Ki Sena and Kinnar Katha. On day four, we had Dr. Pushpita Avasthi as speaker. She is the president of Non-Violence and Peace Academy, national president at Ashikul, and president at Guardian of Earth and Global Culture Ambassador of People's Vigilance Committee on Human Rights, Netherlands. She shared her experience on how activism and social service can serve the society and challenge the status quo. On day five, Professor Dr. Ranjina Saksana, who is currently working as professor at Delhi University. Her field of expertise and interest include Russian literature, contemporary Russian literature, along with Russian women's writing and literary traditions. She shared the ideas of Virginia Woolf and how Woolf challenged the status quo of patriarchy by writing her groundbreaking ideas in an essay, Room of One's Own. Day 6, we had Dr. Rajesh Sarkar, assistant professor in Department of Sanskrit at Banaras Hindu University, who expressed his views on yoga and discovery of our roots in challenging the status quo. Last but not the least, day 7, we have Dr. Sonu Seni, assistant professor at Jawaharlal Nehru University, who is considered one of the leading experts in the field of innovative teaching techniques of Russian language. He has translated several Russian works into Hindi and English language. Thank you, sir, for sharing how Russian writers, especially Svetlana Alexievich, and her works reveal truth. How oral stories challenge the status quo to provide multiple perspectives by giving voice to the marginalized section of the society. As Albert Einstein said, the revolution introduced me to art, and in art, art introduced me to the revolution. The transformation and change in society can only be done through art. This faculty development program has proved it true. All the eminent speakers have shared feeling that through art, change is possible. The engaging and intellectually thought-provoking discourse which we had through this FDP for 7 days would have surely forced us to think the relevance of literature, art, and cinema, and how art can always be seen as a medium for bringing change in society. to make it more better, just, equal, and free for humanity. I would like to thank the think tank of this FDP who brought this idea to forefront. Professor Dr. Kumkum Rema, convener of the program, head of the department, Amity School of Languages, Lucknow, who constantly challenges the status quo, whether it is through her visionary and dynamic leadership or through philosophical ideas in the classroom engagements. Without her guidance and support, we would not have been able to organize such program. Thank you, ma'am. My special thanks to Honorable Speaker Dr. Sonu Saini, sir, for sharing his experience. It was indeed enriching and knowledgeable session, sir. My sincere thanks to Ms. Shraddha Srivastav, who has worked day and night to make this workshop possible, and under whose guidance we were able to obtain necessary operations to conduct this FDP. I'm very thankful to all faculty members and non-teaching staff members who always stand by us and motivate us. I feel proud and thank you for making this event a successful one. At this juncture, I would like to congratulate the wonderful anchors, Ms. Adarshi Dubey and Ms. Yamani Mishra, for holding the session all together. I would request Ms. Gauri Dubey and Mr. Abhinav Singh to accept my deepest gratitude for technical assistance. If time is money, then today you have spent millions for us. Thanks to the audience for their presence and patience. Have a wonderful day ahead. With this, we close this faculty development program. Thank you.